I came home later than I'd planned that evening. But, honestly, time had started to blur. The sky was already dark, the kind of velvet gray that makes the world feel heavier somehow. My body ached from hours in meetings, and my head throbbed from pretending I still had energy. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, maybe even before that. Coffee had been my only fuel. My husband hadn't called or texted. Again. I used to keep track of which city he was in, what hotel, which client he was meeting. But at some point, I stopped keeping score. Whether it was Chicago or Dallas or Boston, it didn't matter anymore. It had all blended into the same kind of empty space between us. The silence in our marriage had grown so thick, it didn't even need words anymore. The house greeted me in stillness, clean, cold, and far too quiet. I dropped my bag on the kitchen counter with a sigh and kicked off my heels like they'd betrayed me. Every step felt heavier than the last. Without thinking, I reached for the wine cabinet, pulled out a bottle, poured a glass. Then another. Eventually, I gave up on the glass altogether. Just the bottle and me, side by side, like old friends. I wrapped myself in my worn robe and sank into the couch. Some mindless cooking show flickered on the TV. I wasn't watching. I wasn't really present at all. The wine dulled the sharp edges, numbing me to the loneliness I didn't have the strength to name. That's when I heard it, the front door creaking open. I turned quickly, heart leaping into my throat. For a moment, I'd forgotten anyone else even lived here. But there he was, my stepson, standing in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyebrows raised. "Hey," he said casually, clearly not expecting to walk into a scene of wine and disarray. I blinked, disoriented. Oh, right. He'd been staying with us again after his breakup. He needed time. Space. A place to regroup. I'd welcomed him back. Out of habit. Out of kindness. Maybe out of guilt. "You scared me," I muttered, straightening my robe and tucking my hair behind my ears, suddenly far too aware of how I looked. Disheveled, vulnerable, exposed. He set his bag down and smirked. "Didn't mean to. Looks like you've had quite the night." I tried to laugh it off. "It's been one of those days." Then I added, "or years." He gave me a look, not mocking, not pitying, just seeing me. "Didn't expect company," I said with a weak smile. "And I didn't expect to walk in on a wine crime scene." That got a real laugh out of me. The first one in a while. "You're home early," I said, steering the conversation away. "Plans got canceled. Thought I'd come back and knock out some work." I gestured toward the couch. "Be my guest. Join the pity party." He hesitated for a beat, then sat down beside me. Close but not too close. The pause that followed wasn't awkward, exactly, but it was heavy, like something unspoken had followed him into the room. "You all right?" he asked. I sighed and rubbed my temple. "Just tired. And, I don't know. Lonely, I guess." He turned to face me, his eyes steady. "I notice." Just 2 words, soft, but they cut right through me. I looked at him, trying to read his face. There was concern, but also something else. A flicker of something warmer. Deeper. Less safe. "You're sweet," I said, deflecting. "Your dad used to be sweet too. Before life got in the way." He didn't answer. The silence between us stretched longer. "I'm glad you're here," I said, mostly to the room. He looked at me differently now. There was no judgment in his gaze, just something raw. Present. "You look different tonight," he said. "How?" He tilted his head slightly. "Just softer. More real." I should have brushed it off. I wanted to. But his words slipped into me like warmth on a cold night. I arched a brow and smiled. "Careful. Compliments like that can get you in trouble." He didn't blink. Maybe I'm okay with trouble. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure I wasn't either. He handed me a glass of water, and I took it, grateful, embarrassed. My fingers trembled slightly, but he said nothing. He just watched me, the way he always did. Too attentively. "I didn't mean to unload all that," I said. "Just venting." He shook his head. "It's okay. Actually kind of refreshing to hear someone be real for once." I glanced sideways at him. "You mean depressing?" He grinned. "No. I mean honest. Most people fake it so hard they forget who they really are. That hit me harder than I expected. I'd perfected the performance, the composed wife, the gracious hostess, the woman who always had it together. But the truth was, I hadn't recognized myself in a long, long time. You ever feel like you woke up one day in a life that doesn't belong to you? I asked. All the time, he replied, his voice low. That's why I left Emily. Everyone thought we were perfect, but it was just empty. I turned to him, surprised by the rawness in his tone. We stopped talking, he continued. We were just existing in the same space. Going through the motions. The words echoed in my mind. I'd said them to myself more times than I could count. You know, he added, I used to think you had it all figured out. Back when I was in high school. You always seemed strong, put together. I let out a bitter laugh. That was a mask. A really convincing one. He looked directly at me. You don't need a mask now. Something about the way he said it made me flinch, not in fear but in recognition. I felt seen for the first time in years. When did you become so wise? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. He shrugged. Maybe when I realized grown-ups are just kids with better lies. I laughed. Then our eyes locked again, and this time, neither of us looked away. The air between us changed, thicker, slower, heavier. He reached up gently and brushed a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered just a second too long against my cheek. I didn't move. You should hear how your husband talks about you when you're not around, he said quietly. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Like you're a chore. An obligation. Like he's just tolerating you. The words didn't sting. They pierced. Why would you tell me that? Because you shouldn't be invisible. You deserve more than to just be tolerated. Something inside me cracked. I didn't reply. I stood, needing to break away from the weight of the moment. I should get to bed. He nodded. Yeah, of course. I paused at my bedroom door. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I said, You can come in. Just to talk.